MetaQuest just went old school, reviving the critically acclaimed series Bulletstorm. But is Bulletstorm VR a match for its predecessor? Following a 1-month delay, this game has finally hit the shelves. But is it a final product? My take is sure to help you decide if Bulletstorm VR is for you. I'll walk you through the game's graphics, game mechanics, gameplay, story, and then I'll give you my overall impressions. So let's talk about the game's graphics. They were not the best. They weren't the worst graphics in the world, but I've definitely seen better. And it wasn't necessarily that just the polygon count was low, the textures were kind of crummy too. And honestly, some of the textures looked okay. And then some of them weren't okay at all. This game originally was set to come out in December of 23, and now it's coming out mid-January of 24. I'm kind of starting to see why with just the graphics alone, because they clearly didn't have time to polish this thing up. I'm hoping they'll have a graphics update in the future. Personally, I can play a game with bad graphics. That doesn't bother me. When I was a kid, 16 bits blew our mind, so the fact that I can be inside of a game is kind of cool enough for me. But if you're a graphics gamer, I can definitely see how it would be disappointing jumping into a game as epic as Bulletstorm and realizing it kind of looks underwhelming as far as appearance goes. So although it doesn't really bother me that the game has low graphics, it didn't help considering some of the other issues I had with it. If graphics isn't the kind of thing that bothers you, or it's a deal breaker, let me know in the comments. Which brings us to our second topic, mechanics. I felt like the mechanics in many cases had a little bit of clunkiness to them. When they first introduced you into climbing, you have to climb up this rope thing, and it was very awkward for me. I wasn't quite sure how I was supposed to hold it. Half the time when I would grab, it wouldn't accept it. And then when I got to the top, I realized you're supposed to grab at certain points on the rope, which I don't really understand why, because other games like Population 1, they don't care where you grab, as long as you grab somewhere. The jungle gym style climbing was a lot better and a lot more smooth. When I first started the game, there were many different choices of gameplay mechanics. You could choose between 3 different ways to load your weapon, and at first I thought that was pretty cool, but later I thought, they might be doing this because the fun way, which is to actually load the magazine and pull the bolt yourself, it's not that smooth. I kept pulling the bolt and then looking down and realizing the bolt hadn't been pulled all the way. And it could just be me, but it took me forever how to figure out how to do some simple things in this game, like where to go next. There were no arrows or clear direction. Sometimes I found myself wandering in a spot. When I went to grab certain things, I felt like my hand wasn't the right way. When I went to put the energy leash on my hand, I had the hardest time getting that to stick. Finally figured it out, but honestly, I didn't figure it out. It just worked that time. I do like that you can kick, slide, climb, you can leash people. There are all sorts of things in this game that are done pretty well, but a lot of the mechanics at this point felt kind of clunky. That kind of makes you think, well, what about the gameplay? So the gameplay, I thought it was pretty good. I think it was a bit of a roller coaster. There were moments when I was like, oh yeah, I like this a lot, and then moments like, this is kind of boring. For one thing, the epic moments, they're epic. I felt totally immersed in the epic moments. I didn't have anything that really bothered me in the moments of, I don't know what you would call it, like major bosses or just scenic fights. I don't really know how to describe it, but the epic moments, those were my favorite in the game. One of the things I could have done without, the cutscenes. The cutscenes were actual scenes that you could see, and I noticed there were 2 different options in the menu. You could either watch them in 2D or 3D. I thought 3D meant more immersive, where you were kind of in the cutscenes, playing it out, which would have been really cool, but that's not what it was. It just literally made it from watching a 2D TV screen to watching a 3D TV screen, and honestly, it didn't look good at all. I can't show you on here how bad it looked, but it didn't really look 3D so much as it did as if I was watching 2 screens at once. It wasn't very pleasing to the eye. At first, I kind of thought the shooting was a little bit boring. You definitely can do things like leg shots and head shots and get a little creative, but I started running out of ammo. But at one point, because I ran out of ammo, I had to start getting creative with how I killed, and I realized that little leash you wear, that thing is pretty awesome. You can do a lot of things with it, and it allows you to save ammo if you leash somebody over and blast them in the head once or twice. That's really cool. I thought the leash was very ingenious with the way that they allow you to use it in VR. So the gameplay was just kind of all over the place. In the beginning, it's very cutscene heavy, and you almost feel like the cutscenes are having more fun than you are. And there are some kind of disappointing spots. At one point, I thought I was about to get to fly a helicopter. I didn't get to. It was in the cutscene only. There was also a scene where you got to use these cool gravity boots and walk like horizontally on a building, but there wasn't really much to that. It was neat coming in. It was a neat little scene to look at, albeit with lower quality graphics. You had these little drop kits, and the drop kits were where you could purchase upgrades for your weapons. And it's really cool how you purchase the upgrades. One of the best things about the gameplay is how they make it so creative. Not only did you start figuring out, like I said earlier, that you have to be creative with your kills in order to conserve ammo, but they actually give you points that you can spend to upgrade your weapons by doing creative kills. I got a creative kill for pulling a guy into a cactus and killing him that way. You get creative kills for explosion, scenic damage, and all kinds of cool things. At first, the creative kills were a little bit irritating because it seemed like a lot of times in the game, there was so much junk on the screen, I could barely tell where the bad guys were. It was telling me all the points I was getting from all these kills, and there were bad guys that were still alive hidden behind them. It was kind of messy, and I understood why. I mean, it was kind of going old school, almost arcade-like, and I get that, but as far as immersive VR experience, I really felt like I was playing a video game. And I know, Hippie Man, you are playing a video game, but I don't like to feel like I'm playing a video game in VR. That's why I do VR. I like to feel very immersed, and this game didn't give me the feeling of immersion whenever I was playing it. This may not be something that bothers you, but I didn't like it too much. That little leash glove thing is really cool. For one character you play, it had a little sword aspect to it, so you could literally just leash people and bring them in and then cut them with your sword. And to be honest, with that character, it started feeling really easy because I just kept leashing people in, cutting with a sword. I wasn't even using my gun. So I'd say this game is a little imbalanced on the gameplay. There were times when I felt like it felt really hard and times when I felt like it felt really easy. But there were definitely many times when I just wasn't sure exactly what I was supposed to do next. Now let's talk about the story. I really can't say much about the story because I don't want to spoil it for you, especially since I kind of think the story's pretty good. These are the, leanest, meanest, roughest, gruffest guys you could imagine. And the story kind of shows you that they have a heart and they want to do the right thing, even though they're just constantly blowing the legs and heads off people. But the story is probably one of the best things about this game so far. And I know that's probably not what you want to hear, but remember, this is just my opinion. If stories are real important to you, it might be enough for you to play. Let me know in the comments. So what are my overall impressions? I think if you remember the Bulletstorm series and you really enjoyed it, I have a feeling you're going to like this game. I have a feeling you're going to overlook the things that I complain about until they have patches and updates and stuff like that. The graphics probably won't bother you if you're nostalgic for the game because, well, the graphics weren't that great considering where we're at today. The best looking part of the graphics was the guns. The guns look pretty good, but anything about 3 feet away from you, it was not too hot. And like I said, the graphics don't bother me. What really bothers me is it didn't feel like a game I'm going to go back and play very often, if at all. I thought it was kind of fun. I really liked the epic scenes, but I just don't think that this one was a winner for me. It may be for you. It may be something that you absolutely love, but I will likely be waiting for an update before I even try it again because there's just too many things in there that kind of ruin the experience for me to continue grinding on it for now. If you're nostalgic for this series and don't really care how good it is, let me know in the comments. I'd like to gauge what kind of interest is in this game in the first place. I hope that helps you a lot on whether or not you should get Bulletstorm VR. And don't go anywhere, because I got a couple more videos for you to choose from.